Hey guys, it's Pastor Ken here. Today we are wrapping up our series that we're calling Priestly, and throughout this series, which I've been really excited about, we've been looking at how we're all priests, each and every single one of us. Some people, there's this preconception that, or there's this kind of cultural drive to say that the leader of a church is a priest, and that's not biblical. Biblically, all human beings are created to represent God. All human beings are created to be priests. And so it's really, we could say this, it's not too much of a stretch biblically to say that to be a human is to be a priest. And if you're human today, then I want to say that you're a priest. Yes, I'm a priest. Yes, I'm a pastor in the church, Every Nation Melbourne, but it's not because I'm a pastor in a church in Every Nation Melbourne that I'm a priest. It's because I'm a human. It's because I follow Jesus. And what that is we're reclaiming this idea that each and every single one of us has a role to play in representing who God is to the world around us, to the creation around us, to the cosmos around us. Really, we are all priests. To be human is a priest. You are a priest because we are made in the image of God, and we're made in God's image to represent Him, to represent Him. We represent God, who God is, to the rest of creation, to the cosmos, to our neighbors, and we represent the rest of creation, the cosmos, and our neighbors back to God. Our priestliness is found in Jesus' summary of the law. Jesus says the law can be summarized by love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, which is just another way to say love your neighbor as yourself. We love God, we love our neighbor, and we stand in between these two parties, and we represent one to the other. That's what it means to be a priest. That's what it means to be a human. You're a priest. I'm a priest. Priests stand between. That's what we've been looking at this whole time. Priests stand between. They're intermediaries. They stand between God and creation. They stand between heaven and earth. They stand between the living and the dead. Each and every single one of us. Let me go back to what I said before. To be a human, biblically speaking, to be human is to be a priest. To be human is to be priestly. You can't just look at me and say, oh, Pastor Ken is a leader in Every Nation Melbourne, therefore he has to do all of the priestly stuff. Well, I do. Just today I was on a chaplaincy kind of professional focus group, and we're talking about how we can be priests on the university context. It's very important to us in the Every Nation world, right? I'm priestly. I'm a priest to the neighbours around us, the people that I interact with. And I love doing that. I love doing that and being a pastor in Every Nation Melbourne. But I can't be a priest in your neighbourhood. I can't be a priest with your friends. I can't be a priest to your family members. That's your job. That's on you. I'm responsible for the relationships God's given me, and God's given you a responsibility. God's given you a privilege. He invites you into the incredible adventure of being a priest wherever you happen to be. And that's something that we're all have to give an account to God to for one day. But each and every single one of us, we are priests. And as we've gone through this series, we've looked at good examples of priests. Priests that have shown us what it really is, the heart of our humanity, the heart of our priestliness in representing God, of standing between. And we looked at the idea of how priests speak a blessing. They speak a blessing over people's lives. We looked at the idea of how priests, they bear the name of God, not in vain, and they also bear the name of their neighbours to God. We've looked at priests, how they would even put themselves at risk to stand in between the living and the dead. And it's been great. I really enjoyed looking at that. And maybe I haven't enjoyed this as much, but it's been just as important. We've looked at priests that have made mistakes. We've looked at bad examples of priests. We've seen on the one hand, we've seen priests who are faithful and they're selfless. And that's a good thing, right? That's selfless and faithful priests. And they're the ones that really capture what it means to live out the fullness of this calling, of this vocation that all human beings have. And then on the other hand, we've looked at priests who have been selfish and faithless. And those are bad things, right? Where do we fall on that spectrum of selfless and faithful, or selfish and faithless? Where do we stand on that spectrum? I know that me personally, I move up and down that spectrum all the time. I get closer and closer to being selfless and faithful, and sometimes I move to being selfish and faithless. You know, that's kind of what it means to be human, right? We've seen, I can relate to both of these examples of being a priest, because I'm a human being, which on the one hand, yes, it means that I'm priestly, just by the fact that I'm human, I'm made in the image of God. But being human means I'm also complicated. Being human means that at times I'm weak and I stumble and I make mistakes. And that complexity in our humanity, that can be discouraging. I can be discouraged at times. You know, have you, let me put it to you this way. Have you ever stumbled in something and then wanted to give up completely? Have you ever started a diet, maybe a New Year's resolution to eat more healthy, and then you do really well, you're doing really well, you're staying on board, and then all of a sudden you fall off the wagon because the $9.95 for, or the $10 for 10 pieces of KFC comes out, and you get 3 boxes. You spend $30 and you have 30 pieces of KFC, and it's all, I've done so well so far, but now I've fallen off the wagon, I might as well just give up. Or maybe that's not something you can relate to. Maybe the New Year's resolution was exercise. You're at the gym every day and you're doing really well, and all of a sudden one morning you sleep in and you go, oh, I've slept in, I might as well, maybe we'll go tomorrow. But then the next morning you go, oh, I slept in yesterday, I didn't go, so I might as well not go today, I'll start again next week. And all of a sudden it's just like you're doing so well, but then because you took a step back, you wanted to just give up. I've been there in all of those examples. Or, you failed a subject at uni. Or you failed a driving test and you say, oh, I'll just take public transport for the rest of my life. I'll get other people to drive me around. Sometimes we can feel like that. I know I've felt like that. I've felt like that at times, where in terms of my priestliness, where I've been on a journey to greater selflessness, I've been on a journey to greater faithfulness to God, but then I've become selfish. Then I've acted out of a desire to gain something, or I've been faithless to God. And I think, you know what? I haven't borne God's name. I'm bearing God's name in vain. I haven't borne it correctly. I haven't represented God correctly. And it's like, oh, maybe I should just give up. maybe what everyone says is true. Maybe I should just give up. But for anyone who's ever felt like that, which I suspect is a lot of us, then I have good news. I have great news. The good news is that we have someone on our side. We have someone on our side. We have someone who can help us. We have someone who knows how we feel. We have someone who can show us the way and say, hey, follow me, because I've been in your footsteps and I've walked this path and I'm further ahead of you, and I want to show you what it means to truly be priestly, really truly be human. I'm going to read from Hebrews chapter 4, just 3 verses here, verses 14 to 16, and it talks about the great high priest. And I think you know who it is. So therefore, Hebrews 4 verse 14, since we have a great high priest who has ascended into heaven, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weakness, but we have one who has been tempted in every way just as we are, yet he did not sin. Let us then approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. So I'm just going to break this down quickly, and I want us to see that everything that we've been talking about how as human beings we're made in the image of God, and all the different aspects of what it means to be priestly, and the positive examples and the negative examples even, they find their fulfillment in Jesus. We find the good examples perfected in Jesus, and we find the negative examples redeemed in Jesus. And I love that. So, what does it say here in verse 14? Let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. There's this encouragement from the writer of Hebrews. Let us. Come on, guys. Let's do this. Let us. And I want to say that to us as well. I want to echo the words of the writer of Hebrews and say, let us hold firmly to the faith that we profess. There's so many different things that are going on in life. So many things that make us want to give up at a certain point in time. Oh, I slept in, I didn't go to the gym, or I ate all that KFC chicken when I'm meant to be dieting. And it's like, well, I might as well just give up now. Or, you know what, I blew it at work. I yelled at my boss. And now my Christian witness is ruined. And so I might as well just give up now. I might as well find another workplace or whatever. But you know what? It's human to make mistakes. It's okay. We make mistakes and we want to give up. But let us keep going. Let us hold firmly to the faith that we profess. You know, there's always that temptation to give up. And maybe in the middle of a pandemic, hopefully towards the end of the pandemic, who knows how much longer it's going to go on. But, you know, we've been locked down for 230 days now. It's crazy. That's how many days we've been locked down for. We've been locked down for over 200 days, 230 odd days. And the temptation could be, let's just give up. Why even bother to be a missional community who are building a healthy, engaging culture to connect with our neighbors around us, that we can love them with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, just like we love God. It can be tempting to give up. There's always a temptation to give up. And I wonder, but what always strikes me, whenever I'm tempted to give up, and there's been plenty of times, whenever I'm tempted to give up, I can't get rid of this nagging thought. Well, what happens if I don't give up? How far away am I from breakthrough? How far away am I from seeing God move in a mighty and powerful way? You know, I wonder how many people, and I've seen people give up, and I think about them, and I think, I wonder if you had held on for a little bit longer. I wonder if you had done what the author of Hebrews says, let us hold firmly to the faith that we profess. What if you had held firmly to the faith that you profess for just a bit longer? What if the breakthrough that God had for us when we're tempted to give up was only one day away? What if it was only 1 week away? Would you still hold on? If you knew that the promise that God had for you was coming tomorrow, would you not give up today? If you knew that the promise that God had for you was 1 week away, would you not give up today? If you knew that the promise that God had for you was 1 year away or 10 years away, would you not give up today? Well, of course, Ken. Of course I'd hang on. What if the breakthrough that God promises for you is one lifetime away? Would you hold on then? Would you hold on to the faith that you profess? That God said, Ken, I've got breakthrough for you, and it's going to come through your children after you've gone. Would you hold on then? Ken, would you hold on then? You know what? I'm determined that I will. I will hold on to the faith that I profess. Because the faith that I profess is not primarily about breakthrough, but the faith that I profess is primarily about a person, primarily about a relationship. It's primarily about Jesus. So when the author of Hebrews says, let us hold firm to the faith that we profess, let us hold firm to Jesus. That's what he's saying. And I'm not letting go of Jesus, even if it is a lifetime, until I see breakthrough. Let's hold on to Jesus, guys. Let's hold firm to the faith that we profess. Not this intellectual confession that we have in our head. That's important, yes. But there's this relational trust. There's this allegiance I give to a king that I'm holding on to. Verse 15 says this, for we do not have a high priest who is unable to empathize with our weakness. Have you ever been in a situation, some kind of relational situation, where the other party has misunderstood you? I'm sure you have. I'm sure you've been misunderstood many times in your life. I know I have. Now, isn't that one of the most frustrating things to go through, when the other person is misconstruing what you're saying, misrepresenting what you're saying, or simply just misunderstanding what you're saying? How frustrating is it to be misunderstood? How much relational stress, how much relational stress has misunderstanding and a lack of empathy caused you? I know it's caused a lot in my life. And I can even do with misunderstanding, because that's part of the why we're in a relationship, so that we can listen to one another and grow in understanding of each other and learn each other's stories and go on that journey, yes. But what makes that process so much easier, a billion times easier, is this idea of empathy. When the other person understands, and maybe they don't totally understand where you're at, but they understand what you're going through to a degree, and they show empathy. They show this idea of, you know what, I'm sorry that you're going through this. I don't fully understand, but I'm sorry that you're going through this, and I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I'm not here against you. I'm here for you. Doesn't that make a difference in our relationships? And that's what the author of Hebrews is telling us. Don't give up. Whatever you're going through a pandemic, going through a global pandemic, going through relational issues, going through an identity crisis, going through financial stuff, going through visa issues, whatever you're going through. The author of the book of Hebrews says, don't give up. Hold on to the faith that you profess, because at the center of the faith you profess is a high priest who is able to empathize, a high priest who's able to understand. He empathizes with our weakness. Jesus knows us. That's the good news. We are priests and we fail at being priestly. We are humans and we fail at being human. But Jesus understands us. Jesus knows us. Jesus doesn't judge us. Jesus doesn't shame us. Jesus has been where you are. Jesus has been there where you are. And he's on our side. Wow. I can keep going now, God. I can keep going for as long as you want me to keep going in this direction, because I know, Jesus, you've been where I am. I love it. Verse 16, let us approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. The author of Hebrews is talking about the great high priest. The author of Hebrews is talking about the true high priest. All the other high priests leading up to Jesus, including the one who wanted to find false evidence against him, Caiaphas, and have him crucified for his own selfish needs and gains. All these high priests, including the last one who executed him, pointed to the true high priest in Jesus. And he understands us. And because he understands us, the author of Hebrews says, let us approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Isn't this just the priestly benediction reworded for the new covenant? May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord turn his face upon you and give you peace. The idea of going to the throne of grace is to see the face of God, is to receive the peace of God, is to look upon God and be blessed by him. Let us approach God's throne of grace with confidence, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Because Jesus knows us and the stuff that we've been through, and because he's been through it too, with one critical and crucial difference, that he wasn't broken, he didn't sin, he didn't rebel against God, but he was always faithful to God. Because of Jesus knowing us fully and being faithful to God fully, because of Jesus bearing God's name perfectly and always and faithfully and selflessly, and because of him being fully human as well, and knowing us and our weakness and stuff that we go through, and bearing our names to God the Father, we can come into the throne of grace in the middle of this pandemic, after 230 plus days of being locked down. we can come to God the Father and receive the mercy and find the grace that we need in our time of need to help us. Well, what a high priest. What a great high priest we have, who doesn't judge us, who doesn't shame us, but gives us access to God the Father. You know, just as we wrap up here, I want to encourage you. I want to encourage you with whatever you're going through right now. Maybe you're doing great, but remember, always remember, let's not give up. Let's not let go of who God is in our lives. Let's not let go of this faith that we profess. In fact, let's hold on even tighter. When we want to give up, let's hold on even tighter and say, this faith that I profess is built around a true high priest, Jesus, fully human, fully God. He represents all of humanity. He represents God fully, and he represents both parties perfectly, and he stands in between them. And because of Jesus and his priestly work, I can be blessed and enter into the throne room of God, receive the help and the grace that I need. Let us hold firmly to the faith that we profess. Let us hold firmly to the person we profess. Jesus, Son of God. Jesus, God the Son. Jesus, the true human. Jesus, you know, this is what it's all about. This is what Every Nation Melbourne is all about. This is who Every Nation Melbourne is all about. This is why we want to be a missional community with a healthy, engaging culture, connecting with our neighbours all around us, bearing their names to God. Even today, Kira and I praying the 938 prayer, lifting up the names of the people that God's brought into our lives, bearing them to God. Even when we go through all sorts of anxiety and confusion and anger and pain, even today, Kira and I are just talking about something and just say, you know what, why is this happening? Why are we going through this? Well, Jesus knows. I just even explained to Kira, sometimes I feel so misunderstood. I feel so misrepresented. I feel, and it's okay. Jesus understands. Jesus represents. Jesus knows what it's like to be misunderstood. Jesus knows what it's like to be misrepresented. Jesus is truly God. That's the good news. Let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. Jesus is the true God. Jesus is the true Israel. Remember Israel? Third part of our story, chosen. The nations that came from Abraham. Israel chosen to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. Jesus is the fulfillment of that. True Israel. Jesus, true human. The true Adam. The true humanity. Jesus is the true high priest. What does that mean? He truly stands between the living and the dead. He's alive now. He died to win a victory over death. He died to pay a price for our rebellion against God. He stood between the living and the dead, and now he reigns the universe. He truly stands between the living and the dead. He truly blesses. So we read about Aaron standing between the living and the dead in the plague. Jesus does that truly for us. We read about the priestly blessing in Numbers. And Jesus is the one who truly blesses us. We read about the commandment to not bear the Lord's name in vain, and how it's more than just blasphemy. As in, like, oh my God, but true blasphemy is to be a priest of God and to not represent him correctly. That's true blasphemy. We read about how Jesus truly bears God's name in vain. He's the one who truly bears God's name not in vain. He does it perfectly. He perfectly represents God. He truly bears God's name. He truly bears our name. None of that is done in vain. Jesus is the true high priest. And we read about Joshua in the exiles who had returned. Joshua the high priest in the vision was filthy and dirty and broken and disqualified, but Jesus is the true high priest who takes broken humans, disqualified humans, and cleanses them and makes them whole and calls them to be priests. Jesus is the true high priest. He takes selfish priests, which I can be at times, and teaches them to be selfless like him. He understands, he shows the way, he gives us access to the throne of grace. Because Jesus is the great high priest, because Jesus is the true priest. Now this is it. Listen. Because Jesus is the great high priest, because Jesus is the true priest, we can be true priests as well. Are you a human being? Then you can be a true priest as well. We don't just have to say to our Anglican reverends and our Catholic fathers and say they're priests and thank God for them. Absolutely thank God for them. But all of us, because of Jesus, can be true priests because he is the true priest. Why do we follow Jesus? Why do we follow Jesus? Why do we hold firmly to this faith that we profess? Why? Because he shows us the way to be true priests of God. He's gone before us. He helps us in our journey. He understands us. He understands the desire to want to give up as well. But he never gave up. He releases grace and mercy to us. I love that. In my time of need, which is all the time, in my time of need, I can go to the throne of grace where I can find grace and mercy to help me. And why do I need grace and mercy? Because I'm a priest in a world that is looking for who God really is. Because I'm called to represent all sorts of different kinds of people. People who have got it all together, people who have whole lives are falling apart, people who believe in God, people who believe in other gods, people who don't believe in any God at all. I'm called to represent them. I'm called to represent them to God. I'm called to represent God to them. And I mess up in that. I make mistakes. I get it wrong. I become lazy. I become selfish. But what happens is that in my time of need, instead of giving up, I hold firmly to the faith that I profess. I hold firmly to to the great high priest. I hold firmly to Jesus, the true priest. And he releases grace and mercy to me, and he releases it to you, and he releases grace and mercy to us so that it can flow in us and then overflow from us to all of those around us. So let us hold firmly to this faith that we profess, and let us approach God's throne of grace with confidence, because we have a majestic, glorious, wonderful, powerful, beautiful, true high priest in Jesus. Let me pray into that. Jesus, I just want to thank you for this series, which has been appropriately concluded on who you are, Jesus as the true high priest. And I pray, God, that we would take these truths, and I just speak over every nation, Melbourne, the identity that we are priestly. All of us are priestly, meant to represent you, God, to the rest of creation, and the rest of creation back to you. We're meant to love you with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. We're meant to love our neighbors as ourselves. And that we stand between in this liminal place, this liminal space of who you are on the one hand and all the needs of this city of Melbourne around us on the other. And in that place, God, we thank you for the potential. We thank you for the possibilities that can flow from this, Lord. And even though there's confusion, and even though sometimes we take some steps forward and then we make mistakes, and sometimes we feel like giving up, I pray, Lord, that when that happens, because you are the great high priest, the true high priest who has gone through everything that we've gone through, that you would help us to not give up, that you'd help us to press in, that you'd help us to look to you and know you and serve you in all that we are. And that you would release grace and mercy to us to be the priest you're calling us to be, so that grace and mercy can flow through us to those around us, that they too can be priests. following the true high priest, following the true priest, the true God, the true human, you, Jesus. We love you, and we want to serve you, and we want to declare who you are and tell your story. In your name we pray, Jesus. Amen. Well, guys, that's it from me. As always, I'm Pastor Ken. Be blessed.